For this video, we're going to look at two subjects. First will be the Jardinieres, and then second, we'll look at some spittoons. Now, we've been going over some art china that was made roughly 1902 to 1910. And if you deal with Jardinieres, then you're talking about the early portion of art china, so 1902, 3, 4, maybe even 1905. We'll begin with this printout of a catalog page from the early 1900s. And it shows the three major types of Jardinieres. Number 9 is the Diana shape, number 11 is the President shape, and number 14 is Sultan. So we have a Diana shape Jardiniere here. This is called American Floral. I believe those are azaleas that are depicted in this treatment. And we've got a thick green, or I should say heavy green painting going on the top and bottom, and some elaborate gold tracings on the embossing. We also have American Floral on a geisha jug in the back. Now I want to talk about that for a moment and bring out this Collector's Encyclopedia of Fiesta. This is the 8th edition by Bob and Sharon Huxford. For many years this was the gold standard for those of us who collect Homer Laughlin wares. And we turn to the Laughlin art china section towards the back. And before we go over this particular piece, I do want to say, you know, but for the fact that Huxfords wrote about Laughlin art china, I wouldn't have known about it many years ago. So they have to get some credit for this. Even though they really didn't go into great detail, they did show quite a few different treatments. We have currant, there's golden fleece, white pets. We looked at this in a previous video. In fact, here are the pair of birds. I believe they're doves that I wasn't able to show you because I didn't have a treatment. What else do they have? It's Flow Blue. And this is the Sultan shape with Laughlin Blue. And we're going to talk about that spittoon in a moment, because they call this Flow Blue, but it really isn't. It's blended tint. Some Steinauers and mugs. And Dreamland. We'll be looking at Dreamland in a future video. But back to this one. We have a Steinauer with the same pattern as our Jardiniere, a Diana Jardiniere. And they say of this plate 402, large tankard, this rare item is marked American Floral. So that's where I'm getting that pattern name from. So these two are not marked American Floral, they just have the gold stamp Laughlin art china. But I just wanted to mention that about Huxfords because I think it's important, you know. The editions are no longer in print, and they're both deceased, and we sort of forget how important their work was. We always know about what they contributed with Fiesta and Harlequin, but exposing collectors to these other lines, like Century and Americana, Liberty, Jade, they were pretty much the first to do that. So we'll be looking at this in a moment when we look at spittoons. Now the next Jardiniere I want to show, this predates Laughlin art china. This is from the 1890s. It has no fancy name, it's just simply called Jardiniere. It came in 5 different sizes. Has typical mark for that time period, the signature mark. Nice underglazed green print. We've got some hand-painted embossing and then some gold tracings. So it's pretty elaborate. Again, there are 5 sizes of this. Comes from the 1890s. No special name, just plain old Jardiniere. Now this one is the President Jardiniere. Make some room. Rather large piece. I believe this treatment is called Jacobean, though I'm not 100% sure. And again, you're dealing with the early 1900s, the early part of Laughlin art china, as opposed to the later part where you have like from 1905 to 1910, you know, current White Pets, Dreamland, and Silver Sienna, and Caledon. You're not going to find these Jardinieres because it's usually the early part. But here we see the signature mark from the early 1900s and then the Laughlin art china gold stamp. So that is your President Jardiniere. We'll look at the handles very quickly. Nice embossing on the handles and at the top, as well as the bottom. Almost reminiscent of bridal with this embossing. Bridal toiletware. So we'll move on to spittoons. And we begin with this piece. Probably comes from the 1880s because it has a premium stone china marking on it. We don't know much about this, except the marking tells us the date and that it is a piece of Homer Laughlin. Joanne Jasper, who has written 2 books, a researcher, historian, and collector, she sold me this piece for what she paid for it some years ago. And but there is a condition, and so I'm going to tell you about that right now. So that way it's memorialized on film. And that is, when it's time for me to sell this, or get rid of it, I should say, then it has to go to a museum. And that's exactly what's going to happen with this piece, because it is rather special, unique shape, nice ironstone whiteware. Again, it's marked with the premium stone china, backstamp eagle and over lion. Now, these spittoons were from the early 1900s. And we'll go over the shapes very quickly. This one is the Lincoln shape, rather elaborate looking piece. The Grant spittoon with embossing on the bottom. The Burley spittoon, which is a very thick, heavy-bodied hotelware-like spittoon. Low parlor spittoon. And the Knoll shape. It's just called a Knoll spittoon. Probably a lady spittoon because of its delicate nature, its scalloped edges, and its low body and smaller profile. So we'll look at the treatments now. Now in this Lincoln spittoon, this is the good thing about Lincoln and Grant spittoons. They generally have the treatment numbers. So we see our signature mark, and then we've got a 176. So we can go to the Decorated Specialties catalogs and look up treatment 176. And it says, imitation granite, brown, stenciled, and stippled. So we've got these gold stamps, what they're calling stenciled. This is supposed to be the brown imitation granite, and then it's got gold stippling going on over top of it. Interestingly, 175 is the same, but it's purple, and 177 is green. But this is rather nicely done. Again, this is the Lincoln shape. And then we'll look at this one. This is Grant. And this is treatment number 81. We have the fleur-de-lis marking. Treatment number 81, and this is from 1906, by the way. Let's go down to 81. Jonquil, filled, gold stippled. So this is an underglazed print with filled-in details, which we've seen many times before, particularly with toiletware. But this, I gotta say, is really sloppy. And I'd mentioned this before, I believe, in toiletware, that if you were doing these by hand and you were getting paid by the piece, you had to be really quick and really accurate. Well, this, you can see this green is just rather sloppily done. It looks like it was done in a hurry. And you look at the other portions and you can see they're outside the lines, or they're not even inside the lines in some of them. And again, you see this very sloppy work going on. So this is rather uncharacteristic for filled-in details by Homer Laughlin. But this is the Grant shape, again, treatment number 81. Put this off to the side. Because I want to look at another Lincoln spittoon. This has blended tints, and it's treatment number 7090. Now, treatment numbers that are in the 2000s and 7000s, and some of the 1000s, are going to be toiletware. So we've seen this treatment already on Mingo. So it's a blended tint, some gold stippling, some gold stamps, and we look at this one and we see the same treatment number, 7090. Just like that one, 7090. So we'll look at the spittoon listing, or we could even go to the toiletware listing and it should be the same. And we see 7090 airbrush panels, blue, pink, or orange. They don't mention the green in this particular edition. Dresden, stencil, and stippled. So you do see some overlap with spittoons and toiletware, particularly with Lincoln and Grant. We'll pan through these real quick. You see the hundreds, those are going to be unique to the Lincoln shape, and then you get to all these 7000s. Those all come from toiletware. And here on the Grant side, you start with 0 all the way down to 790. Those are unique to Grant, and then you come down here to the 2000s. Those come from toiletware. Now back to Huxford's for a moment. We see the blue version. It's the same pattern. So the blue version would have the same treatment number, 7090. So they do say that this is flow blue, but it's not. It's actually blended tint. A little bit of a difference between a blended tint and flow blue. And we have another Lincoln spittoon in the back. This one's just got some cherry decals and some gold stamps on it. And a fleur-de-lis marking. And now we'll move to the Burley spittoon. Nice little green stripe with gold encasing lines. This is dated 1926. Pretty late for spittoons. In the 1920s, they start to disappear. It's sort of like the same with toiletware. By the time you get to 1929, there are no more spittoons. And this type of treatment with the lines, or the gold lines encasing the stripe, you see this on a lot of hotelware. So here's the Hallboy jug. We already looked at the Hallboy jugs previously. This one is from 1925. Correction, 1915, no made in the USA. We went over the marks before too. So we see the golden casing lines around this maroon band. So this is probably a piece of hotelware, even though it's not marked hotelware. It has a really thick, heavy body to it. And then the low parlor spittoon. Rather simple shape. This one comes from 1912. Undecorated blank. And finally, the Knoll spittoon, which I do believe that this is a lady spittoon because it's just so much smaller. I'll put it next to the Lincoln spittoon so you can see the difference in height. So even though it's not listed as a lady spittoon in the catalogs, I'm pretty sure that it is. It has floral decals, so it's a little more feminine than the others. And this one is dated as well. It is 1912. So there you go. Spittoons and Jardinieres. There's another spittoon, Manhattan. I don't have an example to show of that today. So, but if ever one comes up, I'll make a special video just for that, and we can revisit spittoons and even Jardinieres. These are extremely difficult to find, the Jardinieres. And again, if you do find one, you're pretty much guaranteed you're dealing with the early part of Laughlin art china from like 1902 to 1904, 1905. So that's it for today.